Hello and welcome to this slightly festive mini-series. I say slightly festive because, as you can see, there is some decoration, there is a Christmas jumper. This is about as festive as I get. Okay, as the nights are drawing in, the weather is getting colder, and of course we get closer to the dreaded C word. We are approaching the time of year when gift sets or starter sets are in abundance everywhere, and so I thought I would do a little mini-series. We have 4 videos lined up talking about the offerings from different brands that go down that line. Firstly, I'd just like to go over a few guidelines that I've used to help me with this series. We have 4 different brands. All of them have to have been sold with some sort of starter set or gift set branding. They must include paints and they must include a cement and paintbrush. They are the basic rules. I've chosen to buy them all from different places to kind of indicate naivety, shall we say. So not going to your regular dealer, but instead buying them from places like eBay or Amazon or Hobbycraft. One of them came from Hobbycraft, which I very rarely use, so that was a bit of a new experience for me anyway. I've also deliberately gone for a mix of subjects. I generally make aircraft that are from the Second World War era, give or take a decade, and I've deliberately steered clear of that on 3 of these. One of them fits that criteria, but generally speaking, they are topics that I wouldn't necessarily normally make. And I'm deliberately following the instructions as accurately as possible. Now that sounds obvious, but I've been making models for so long that I tend to have my own way of doing things. I know when to put the wings on, I know when to stick undercarriage on, that sort of thing. Whereas here I'm making it as per the instructions. I'm not saying that my way is right and the instructions are wrong. Obviously, it's just what I'm used to, knowing my own capabilities. So here I'm trying to push the boundaries a little bit by getting rid of all those boundaries and just making it as close as I can to the actual instructions as if I were a beginner. Basically, I'm trying to forget that I've been doing this a long time to get the true beginner experience. Also, I am restricting myself to basic tools only. I'm not expecting any kit manufacturer to supply a modelling knife with sets. There are legal reasons why that is simply never going to be the case. They kind of assume you're going to have basic tools or that you'll be prepared to buy basic tools. So, as you'll see in all of these videos, I am restricting what I'm using to basic stuff only. And of course, as I've said, I must use the cement, paint and paintbrush that are supplied with the kits. The only other thing which I'm preempting is what if the instructions call for something that is not supplied, like for example the modelling knife. If there are more paints that are required to finish the model than are supplied with the model, well, this will be done on a kind of judgment basis as and when we get there. So I'm going to not go nuts with the paint, but I want the model to look like they present it. You know, if they tell you this is what you can make from this kit, I want to be able to make that as per the instructions. So you may see the occasional extra paint that I will use, but again, I will be very, very honest about that. All of these videos will include unboxing and building, and then a score-based system at the end. I have some criteria written down, and all of them will be marked against it, some of them stricter than others. Bonus points are available, but that works in another way as well. If I'm really annoyed by something, it will get negative bonus points. So not really a bonus, I suppose, but you know what I mean, negative points. The rules to qualify for this challenge must be available in 2023. Pretty self-explanatory. All of these models have been bought very recently. They must include paint and glue, and the value cannot exceed £20. I did make sure that there's plenty available within that price range before deciding on it, so it is definitely a reasonable value. If you are watching this when the video is released, please come back next week for the next instalment. If, however, you are watching it after I've done all 4 videos, then there will be a playlist below you can binge watch to your heart's content. The video is broken down into chapters, so if you do want to skip ahead to a certain part, feel free to. You don't need to listen to me rambling. And thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoy. So, starting off the starter set series, we have the Sherman Firefly from Airfix, which is 1/72nd scale. Obviously a starter set, otherwise it wouldn't be a part of this. And we're going to have a little look at the box first. You can see here the standard Airfix branding, bright red, this very eye-catching, slightly on fire picture of a Sherman in action, or should I say a Firefly in action, whatever you want to call it. And we have a skill level 1 Obviously, it's a starter set, a flying hour, and Airfix Club logo. I don't think it actually ever explains what that is, but here it tells you that it includes polycement, paintbrush, and 3 acrylic paints. Of course, starter set is written big letters on the side as well. The back, we have an image of the made-up product saying actual size, and it also serves as the decal instructions, and it even tells you the 3 paints that are included, with a lot of warnings down the bottom, just stuff in multiple languages to make sure you don't accidentally cement your hand to your face or other such things like that. And this is the end of the box that you would otherwise see. Tells you here 2020 tooling and 2020 design schemes and decal schemes and whatever. Basically, it tells you it's a 2020 kit. It's got Hornby Hobbies on there, who are the parent company, and it tells you it's cartograph decals. Opening up, we get 2 sealed plastic bags. See, nothing else in the box, so we'll chuck that to one side. One bag has the 3 paints that it mentioned, the brush and the poly cement. Even tells you this is the bag for said kit. It's got the product code. We'll have a look at that in a bit. The decals are very minimal. You see that they've tried to keep them as simple as possible by combining them where possible. And you have this fantastic before you start sheet giving you an indication of what tools you're likely to need and basic information about how to make it. So it shows you there clamping or taping, stirring the paint, painting parts on the sprue, and how to do the decals. Onto the instructions itself. We have a little bit of history about the tank. Pause there and read if you want, before we go into a sprue map, and it tells you all the parts and even shows you the sprue map and where the parts are on the sprues. It makes it as easy as possible to follow. This is fantastic. I cannot stress enough how unusual it is for me to see a kit as well presented as this, even telling you when to paint the kit and when to put the decals on, as you'll see shortly. But it's telling you, it even just showing you where the parts were. So you're looking at the sprue. If you follow it, you'll get a big gap exactly where it is on the next part. It's incredible. Very, very well presented. Very well thought out. Anyway, overrun slightly, but here are the plastic parts themselves. We see 1 sprue of green plastic. I'm not questioning the fact that it's green. It's just quite bright and disgusting. The parts are all beautifully moulded. Look at the detail on here. It says frame B, and you've got beautiful crisp detail on a hatch, and the tracks are all in one piece with the wheels and suspension systems, making it really, really easy to make. You've got a few small details, and down there you've got an injection point on the gun, but other than that, really, really well thought out as to where they put everything. The 3 paints we've got are 33, which is matte black. Looks fine in the pot. 53, which is gunmetal, little Humbrol brand on the bottom there. And the main colour, which is, of course, this rather unpleasant-looking 159. Hopefully, spoilers it does, it looks better when it comes out the pot, but hey. And then we have what I like to refer to as bin filler, the Humbrol polycement, as well as a Humbrol Airfix No. 2 paintbrush. In case you don't know, Hornby Hobbies are the parent company for both Airfix and Humbrol, which is why you will see a mix of their products in the same packaging, and we are going to be following the instructions exactly as presented. So let's begin. All of the parts are cut off using these sprue cutters or side cutters, whatever you want to call them. This is a tool which was mentioned in the initial guide, so it's not something that I feel bad about using. It's kind of expected as part of basic modelling tools, and parts were then tidied up with a craft knife. Again, as I've mentioned in the introduction, I don't expect craft knives to be available, so you have to kind of buy your own. Lots of different types are available, and this is just the one that I choose to use. I'm also using a file for basic sanding before then using the polycement straight out of the tube. As a more experienced modeller, I would generally advise against this. I would rather put it into a spare bit of plastic and use a cocktail stick or something thin, a small bit of wire, a paper clip, anything, and apply it with a more precise method. However, as part of the challenge, I told myself I am using the tools as they are given. So I'm using it straight from the tube like some sort of horrific toothpaste. Well, we'll talk about it more afterwards. But hey, it does the job, as you're going to see. The assembly on this kit is absolutely fantastic. It builds so well, it makes so well. You know what I'm trying to say? It fits together just perfectly. I didn't have to fight with it at all. It's very, very self-explanatory on the instructions. And you see here I'm assembling the drive wheel. You have to forgive me, I don't normally make tanks. I have some knowledge, but it's a bit sketchy. This is probably the most fiddly part at this stage, which is just the vent above the exhaust. Onto the first paint, which is 159. The instructions told me to paint the chassis at this stage. Very grateful that they do. And when you reveal the lid, you get this kind of pasty, mushy gloop. The instructions do not tell you this, but I am telling you now. Add water. Just take the pot, 1 or 2 drops of water inside, mix it together, and then paint with it. I double checked, the instructions do not say this at all. Yes, there will be points marked down for it, spoilers, but once the water is added and you can actually mix it properly, it goes on very well. The brush is absolutely fine. I mean, it's difficult to really rate a paintbrush, isn't it? It paints, it physically does the job that it's supposed to do, so that's fine. One little bit here, I've just removed that bit of sprue to enable access to paint the top of the tracks. The instructions don't tell you to do this. This is me making a judgment call, thinking, you know what, I'm going to make my life easier. And then we get number 33, which is another part of me kind of cheating a little bit. There's only going to be a couple of moments of cheating, so don't worry. As you can see, once you open the top, it is solid. It is just a solid black lump. There is no way that is going anywhere. Adding water didn't work in this instance. I feel that it probably would have done if I persisted with it. However, I actually have enough of these that I just found another one that wasn't solidified and used that instead. So, not great, not going to lie. Before anyone mentions it in the comments, I know that Airfix have worked hard to try and improve the quality of their starter set paints. I'm just going to invite you to go back to the beginning where I said all of these kits are available in 2023. Whilst the box says that this particular kit was made in 2020, and likelihood is the paints have been there for that long, I bought it in 2023, okay? I'm not going to suddenly pretend that the paints are good because I know that they've improved them. I take it exactly as I got it out the box. Realistically, I mean, I don't know if the other brands have done the same thing with their paints, so it'd be unfair to mark one down and one not. Anyway, right, sorry, got slightly sidetracked. I'm now fitting the small parts, which are things like towing eyes and a couple of lights at the front as well. The instructions make it perfectly clear how to put it in, but it is a little bit fiddly. See here I'm using just a spare wooden stick to try and kind of put some cement in and then poke the lights or the hooks. Not the easiest of processes if you're not familiar with scale modelling. However, that said, it's still fairly easy. I mean, I'm just nitpicking by saying it's not ideal. And then we've got a few small parts on the hull. This, I assume, is the gun cradle, maybe? And then the machine gun. We'll be talking a little bit about that later, but the hull machine gun was put on at that point, and the gun mantlet on the turret. Like I say, this is following the instructions step by step. We now come to the first problem that I encountered with building this kit, which is the gun barrel. As you see here, it's basically a T-shape, and one of my T-tops was broken. It is supposed to be held in between the mantlet and a little piece that holds it from inside the turret, and because of the T being broken, one of those was never going to be in place. Essentially, I glued it into the mantlet, as you can see here, and still kept it in place with that one like securing piece. However, the gun will now never be able to lift and drop as per intended. Now, is this Airfix's fault? Honestly, I can't say. If you look back at the footage of me unboxing it, you can see that it is clearly broken when I get it out of the bag. As such, it was probably broken either in transit or even from the factory, so it may be a design issue, but because I don't know, I'm not going to suddenly mark it down and say that's bad. However, it's still not great. It's supposed to be a really hardy kit. It's supposed to be able to be made by an 8-year-old with almost no experience, so Yeah, not ideal, but hey, I got through it. Anyway, as you've seen, I've more or less assembled the rest of the kit by now, and we're trying the third and final paint, which is number 53, and it is also pretty solid. This one was successfully thinned down with water. As such, it's still usable. It's not like the black where I just felt it could not be used. But again, I feel like some sort of explanation that if it is solid, it may need some water. You never know. I will be trying some newer starter sets. Maybe they fixed it by now. Anyway, the number 53 is painted over black. I didn't actually mention, I painted the tracks black, again, because I just felt it would be a better base for the 53, and I was painting the tyres anyway. So yeah, it just kind of felt like the right thing to do. Anyway, the track assembly, wheel assembly, suspension unit, whatever. The everything is then glued to the side of the hull. This is the only part which I actually had trouble gluing, not because of the bin filler, but because there are only a few points with which to actually assemble or place the cement and actually get the bite, if you like. So a couple of times the tracks fell off. I ended up taking them off and finishing the painting that way. But you see here, this is before that happened. I am painting the entire kit with the green that was supplied, the 159. That includes the turret, all with the same brush. It is the only brush I used during the entire build. And you know what? It was really nice. Additional part alert. Gloss varnish 70.510 from Vallejo was painted over the entire tank. Some people will say that it is absolutely essential that you need to gloss varnish before putting decals down, and some will say no, it is absolutely fine. All I know is I prefer the result when it's been glossed. I'm also painting the turret just for consistency. Essentially what this does is it creates a smoother surface and it makes it easier to put the decals on. It does not explain this in the instructions. However, the compromise was made because this is going to be on display on my shelf and I want it to just look good enough that I'm happy for it to sit with other models. I don't think it detracts too much from the kit or the nature of making this as a starter set, so I went with it. All of the 4 kits will have the same treatment, so again, consistency will be fine. I'm not going to add or detract any marks for any of the kits for that. Anyway, the decals are really easy to put on. The instructions tell you how to put them on, and the way that they are shaped and printed means that it is very, very easy. Like I said, the entire hull is basically one, like the triangle you can see there, the triangle, the serial and the American star, they are all one piece, and that just makes it notably easier to actually put it on. For the smaller decals on the front and back, I just move them on with a small stick. I also got tweezers. Again, the tweezers are mentioned in the instructions. A small stick isn't mentioned in the instructions, but I thought, you could easily do that. It doesn't take too much to understand. Yeah, it might be easier to poke it with a thing. You could also just use tweezers to do it. Just hold it and use the tweezers. But anyway, matte varnish 70.520 was then painted over the top of the entire model. Because I put the gloss varnish on, it is very, very shiny. The matte varnish will dull that down, give it a much flatter finish, and will, of course, act as a protective coat to make sure that those decals and the paintwork are less likely to be chipped or battered through the general wear and tear of owning a kit. We then crack open the 53 again and paint, as per the instructions, some of the finer details. So we've got sort of tank tools, an axe type thing, and some other tool-shaped thing, all using exactly the same brush, as I've said, just finally picking out the detail. It does require a steady hand, although the fact that you can do both this and the bigger spread of green with the same brush is very good. The whole machine gun also gets a coat of 53, and then leather brown, another Vallejo paint, was added. This is the only colour other than the 3 supplied that I used, and it was used very, very sparingly just on these 2 tiny handles. The justification for using it is, to be honest, at this point the kit was good enough. I thought, you know what, it's already going to get a very high score. I don't mind improving it a tiny bit by adding in the brown. It will just liven up the tools a little bit, make it look to me a little bit more natural. So I took that decision. Before the grand reveal, a quick shout out to my channel members. They are a wonderful group of people who support the channel financially and just keep me motivated to do this. There are member exclusive photos, there will be polls for members, and you get these little emotes as well. If you're interested in joining them, please do. If you don't, then that is absolutely fine as well, but I just want to remind them that they are very much appreciated, so thank you. Okay, let's get this out the way before the grand reveal. The hull machine gun that I keep spitting at every time I mention is so very, very annoying that I almost didn't buy this kit because of it. I know it seems like such a small thing, but please let me explain. The Sherman Firefly was a British adaptation of a Sherman hull to fit the 17-pounder anti-tank gun. This was a very large gun, and it took some compromises to fit into a Sherman tank. Now, one of those compromises is quite well documented, that is that the gun was mounted sideways, or the breech was sideways. However, another key difference is the British operated a 4-man tank crew over the American 5-man tank crew. The 5th man in an American tank was next to the driver and, amongst other things, operated the hull machine gun. Well, the British didn't need a 5th man, but what they did need is ammunition, because that whopping great gun basically meant you only had ready rounds. So by having a hull machine gun, it is categorically not a Firefly, there would be no ammunition, and thus it would be more or less pointless. It is wrong, think it looks stupid, and I hate it and want to throw it out of the window. Not really, the rest of the kit does make up for it, but it's still infuriating. Well, here is the end result, and I must say I am very impressed. The kit itself, it just basically makes itself, other than the small parts that are on the hull, which they're indicative of what you expect with scale modelling, but they were a little bit of a surprise on this sort of kit. And obviously the broken gun. Everything else was just a pure delight. I basically made this in an afternoon. It did not take long, and it was not difficult. And so, on to the score. We have the 5 categories in front of you, and we have my rating for it. Let me explain as we go. Now, ease of build, pretty self-explanatory. It's a 5. It is perfect. There is nothing that I would really change about it. There are some small parts. I do think tweezers are necessary, but I'm not going to mark it down for that. They're tweezers. They're an easy enough thing to use. Completeness. I've given 4.5. This does feel a little harsh in some respects, but Airfix has been clever in that they know they're going to give you 3 paints, and they make sure they choose a colour in which you only need 3 paints. However, strictly speaking, if you need to put the wooden handles on the tools, you're going to need an extra paint. So it's a compromise that they've done. I absolutely get why they have done it. However, I would rather see just another paint in there. And even then it would feel a bit pointless because you're only doing it for tiny bits. But you know what I mean? It feels like there's still something lacking. It feels very much that they've compromised. Quality, 3. This is going to look harsh. Let me explain. We have to rate every element of this, which is the paintbrush, the cement, the kit, everything. Okay? Now, the kit itself gets a 5, straight up. It's never going to be anything else, is it? However, the paints. If the paints are not usable, they are a 0. And 33, the black, was not usable. Could I have salvaged it? Possibly. Would it be better if you bought it now? Probably, but it's a 0. End of. The 53 gunmetal, I'm giving 2.5 because it was usable, but it wasn't in a particularly good state, and it took a lot of stirring and a lot more effort than I would have wanted. So, again, not great. Could it be improved now? Yes. Have I already explained why I'm being a bit harsh with it? Yes. Moving on. The green gets a 4. It would be a bit lower, however, the end result is really good. I actually really like this paint. So, again, you have to add water, and it doesn't explain, and all of these paints would have had a higher score if it just said in the instructions you might want to thin with water. But either way, you know, I can't give it a 5. It could be better. The brush, it worked. It's a 5. Done. The cement, I'm giving a 2.5. It worked, but it's thick. It is gloopy. I would rather you didn't have to use it from the tube, and would thoroughly recommend do not use it from the tube. But because it doesn't say that, again, we have to just go with the user experience. All of that averaged up and rounded equals a 3. Presentation. This is things like the box. Does it make it clear what you've got? Well, absolutely it does. It tells you it's a starter set. It tells you what paints it includes, even telling you the colour. When you flip it over onto the back, it literally says, these are the 3 colours you've got. It's got the helpful guide on it. It's just a 5. It makes it super clear. Well done. And enjoyment. Now, you may be wondering why I didn't put the enjoyment as a 5. This is a bit of an odd one because I felt that it was almost too simple. And I don't want to look like a bit of a dick and rate it down because, oh, it's too easy. It's more, I spent the money on a kit that took me little more than an afternoon to throw together. I kind of feel like for the same price on a normal non-starter set kit from Airfix, you just get a little bit more. Yes, it's harder, but not that much. I mean, a simple Airfix kit is simple either way. This starter set feels almost too simplified. I do feel like I am being a little bit harsh. However, decisions have been made. I thought about it long and hard, and this is what we're going for. I am also giving the Airfix Sherman Firefly a bonus point for being from Airfix. Now that sounds incredibly biased, and you are absolutely correct, but what I mean by this is there is an enormous range of starter sets now relative to other brands. When I did a search for this, it's very clear that Airfix are hot on the marketing. They are hot on variety. There are a selection of cars, tanks, planes. It is excellent, so they're getting a bonus point for not just shoehorning you down one or two click together kits. However, the whole machine gun does also cost them a point, which therefore cancels out the somewhat biased Airfix have a good range point, giving the Sherman Firefly from Airfix a final score of 8.6 out of 10. Well, there we go, a solid start to this little series of starter stroke gift set videos. There are another 3 coming up, so hit the notification bell if you want to be notified when that next video is out. And we will see how the next ones compare with this Airfix Sherman. Do you think I've been too harsh? Do you think I've been too generous? Do you think I'm just an Airfix fanboy? Because, well, I've heard that all before. Either way, thank you for watching. Subscribe if you haven't already. Like if you would be so kind. And if you did like it, and maybe let me know if having a whole machine gun on a Sherman Firefly is as big as a put-off to you as it is clearly to me. Either way, enjoy, and hopefully I will see you again in another video. Farewell.